Part 6. The morning brought a deceptive calm. The forest was quiet, almost unnaturally so, as if the entire planet had paused to hold its breath. Inside the outpost, the team worked in tense silence, their movements mechanical and deliberate. They fortified the station's defenses, repaired damaged equipment, and stockpiled whatever supplies remained. Each task felt heavier than it should have, weighed down by the knowledge that their next test could come at any moment. Lisa sat cross-legged on the floor of the main pod, staring at the glowing crystal John had brought back from the ruins. Light pulsed rhythmically, casting soft shadows across her face. She reached out hesitantly, brushing her fingers against its jagged surface. It was warm to the touch, almost alive, and she quickly pulled her hand back. "What are you thinking about?" Rachel asked, crouching beside her. "I don't know," Lisa admitted. "This thing, it feels like it's watching us. It's like it knows something we don't." Rachel nodded slowly. "It probably does. Whatever this crystal is, it's connected to those creatures. And maybe to the observers, too. We need to figure out how it works before they decide to throw another curveball at us." Kevin overheard their conversation and snorted. "Good luck with that. Last time we tried figuring something out, we ended up fighting giant wolves with glowing eyes. Let's just smash it and be done with it."
"Oh, John,"
said firmly, stepping into the room. He had been pacing outside, keeping an eye on the perimeter. "We're not destroying it until we understand what it's for." Rachel's. "Right, and I think she is. This thing might be our only way to communicate with whoever's running this show." Kevin threw up his hands in frustration. "Fine, but when this glowing paperweight gets us killed, don't say I didn't warn you." Later that day, the team gathered around the crystal, brainstorming ideas. Rachel suggested using the station's scanners to analyze its composition, while Lisa proposed trying to replicate the pulse frequency it emitted. Kevin, ever skeptical, muttered under his breath about wasting time. But even he couldn't deny the importance of understanding the artifact. As they worked, the crystal began to react. Its glow intensified, shifting colors from pale blue to deep red. A low hum filled the room, resonating in their chests like a heartbeat. Then, without warning, images started to form in the air above it, faint, flickering projections that resembled the carvings they'd seen in the ruins. "Whoa," Lisa whispered, leaning closer. "What is this?" "It's showing us something," Rachel said, her voice tinged with awe. "Look, it's like a map." The projections depicted the planet's surface, highlighting specific areas with glowing markers. One marker pulsed brighter than the others, located near the edge of a vast canyon several miles away. The image shifted, revealing symbols etched into the rock formations surrounding the site. "This has to mean something," John said, pointing to the brightest marker. "Maybe it's where the observers are based, or where the creatures originate from, or it's a trap," Kevin interjected bitterly. "You really think they'd just hand us the answers like this? After everything else they've put us through?" "He's got a point," Lisa admitted reluctantly. "Why would they make it this easy?" "They're not making it easy," Rachel countered. "They're giving us a choice. We can ignore it and stay here, waiting for them to attack again, or we can take the risk and go find out what's really going on." John nodded. "I agree. Staying here isn't an option anymore. If we want answers, we need to act." The decision made, the team prepared for the journey ahead, packed lightly, prioritizing essentials like food, water, and tools. Kevin scavenged spare parts from the rover, reinforcing its engine and tires to handle the rough terrain. Lisa double-checked their navigation system, ensuring they wouldn't lose their way in the dense forest. Rachel studied the crystal's projections, committing the map to memory in case the device malfunctioned. As night fell, they climbed into the rover, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them. None of them spoke much during the ride, each lost in their own thoughts. The forest loomed around them, its twisted trees casting long shadows in the dim light of the twin moons. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an unknown bird made them flinch. After hours of driving, they reached the edge of the canyon. It stretched endlessly in both directions, its walls sheer and jagged, plunging into darkness below. At its center stood a massive stone structure, half buried in vines and moss. Carvings similar to those in the ruins covered its surface, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "This is it," Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Whatever's controlling the creatures, it's here." John parked the rover a safe distance away and turned off the engine. The group stepped out cautiously, their boots crunching against the rocky ground. The air was colder here, carrying a metallic temps that made Lisa wrinkle her nose as they approached the structure. The crystal in John's hand began to vibrate, its light pulsing faster and brighter. The carvings on the walls responded, illuminating pathways leading deeper into the canyon. Without speaking, they followed the trail, their footsteps echoing softly in the stillness. The path led them to a cavern hidden behind a curtain of vines. Inside, the air grew damp and heavy, thick with the scent of earth and decay. The walls were lined with more carvings, depicting scenes of battles between humans and creatures eerily similar to the ones they'd encountered. In the center of the cavern stood a pedestal identical to the one they'd found in the ruins, except this one held a second crystal larger and darker than the one John carried. Before anyone could react, the leader of the pack emerged from the shadows, blocking their exit, its glowing eyes fixed on the new crystal, its posture tense and aggressive. Behind it, the rest of the pack appeared, circling the group like predators closing in on prey. "We're trapped," Kevin hissed, gripping his makeshift weapon tightly. "No," John said, stepping forward. "Not yet," with the smaller crystal, holding it toward the leader. The creature froze, tilting its head as if studying it. Then, unexpectedly, it let out a low growl and backed away, allowing the group to pass. "What just happened?" Lisa whispered, her voice trembling. "I think it recognizes the crystal," Rachel said, her tone thoughtful. "Maybe it's some kind of Kahora signal." They moved quickly, reaching the pedestal and examining the larger crystal. It pulsed with a dark energy, its glow casting ominous shadows across the cavern. John hesitated, unsure whether to touch it. "Be careful," Rachel warned. "If this is what's controlling the creatures, messing with it could trigger something we're not ready for." But there was no time to deliberate. The leader let out a sharp bark, and the pack surged forward, cutting off their escape. Crystals began to resonate with each other, their combined hum growing louder and more intense. "John, do something," Lisa shouted, panic rising in her voice. John clenched his jaw and placed the smaller crystal onto the pedestal beside the larger one. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the cavern shook violently, the walls cracking as beams of light shot upward, piercing the ceiling and flooding the space with blinding radiance. When the light faded, the creatures were gone. All that remained was the pedestal, now empty, and a faint echo of voices whispering in a language none of them could understand. "Well," Kevin said dryly, breaking the stunned silence. "That was anticlimactic." Rachel shook her head. "No, this is just the beginning. Whatever we did, it wasn't enough to end this. Not yet." John looked at the others, his expression grim. "Then we keep moving forward. Because backing down isn't an option." The team exchanged glances, their resolve hardening despite the uncertainty ahead. Whatever challenges lay beyond, they knew one thing for certain. Humanity's survival depended on their ability to adapt, to fight, and to endure. And somewhere in the depths of the planet, the observers watched, waiting to see if they would rise to the occasion or fall like so many others before them. Part 1, the galaxy stretched endlessly. Vast ocean of stars and swirling nebulas that seemed to whisper secrets only the universe understood. Among this infinite expanse floated a small, lonely outpost named Horizon 7. It was little more than a collection of metal pods connected by narrow walkways, all anchored in orbit around an uncharted planet. The planet below was a patchwork of dense forests, jagged mountains, and shimmering lakes that reflected the pale light of two suns. To anyone else, it might have looked like paradise. But for the 4 humans stationed there, it felt more like a prison. John leaned back in his chair inside the main observation pod, staring out at the alien world through the reinforced glass window. His fingers drummed absently on the armrest as he tried to shake off the unease creeping into his thoughts. He wasn't sure what bothered him, more the oppressive silence of space or the strange noises coming from the planet below. Over the past few days, the team had picked up faint howls and screeches during their scans. At first, they thought it was just wind moving through the trees or some kind of natural phenomenon. But now, John wasn't so sure. Lisa sat across the room, hunched over her workstation. Her brow furrowed as she analyzed footage captured by one of their drones earlier that morning. She rewound the clip again, pausing it when something caught her eye. There, in the corner of the screen, was a flicker of movement, shadow darting between the trees. She zoomed in, but the image blurred too much to make anything out clearly. Frustrated, she leaned back and rubbed her temples. "Hey, John," she called, her voice breaking the quiet hum of machinery. "Come take a look at this." John pushed himself up from his seat and walked over. "What is it?" "I think I saw something down there," Lisa pointed to the screen. "Right here." "See it?" John squinted at the grainy footage. Could be a glitch. Or maybe just an animal. "That's what I thought at first," Lisa said, her tone uncertain. "But then I noticed something weird." "Watch this part again." She replayed the clip, slowing it down frame by frame. This time, John froze. In one frame, the shadowy figure appeared to mimic a human gesture, easing its arm as if waving. It lasted only a split second before vanishing into the underbrush. "What the hell?" John muttered under his breath. Kevin entered the pod just then, holding a tray of food. He stopped short when he saw the tension on their faces. "What's going on?" "Take a look," Lisa said, gesturing toward the screen. Kevin set the tray down and peered at the footage. After a moment, he shrugged. "Probably nothing. Could be a trick of the light." "It didn't feel like nothing," Lisa insisted. "And those sounds we've been hearing, they're not random. Something's out there, and I don't think it's friendly." John sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Even if there is something, we're unarmed. Remember, no weapons allowed? It's the whole point of this mission, to show we can coexist peacefully." Kevin rolled his eyes. "Yeah, because that always works out well." Rachel appeared in the doorway, interrupting their conversation. Her arms were crossed tightly over her chest, and her expression was grim. "Guys, you need to see this." They followed her to the communications hub, where another monitor displayed live feed from the external cameras. At first glance, everything seemed normal: the barren landscape surrounding the station, the endless void of space beyond. Then Rachel pointed to a section of the shuttle's hull visible in the shot. Deep gouges marred the metal, fresh scratches that hadn't been there yesterday. "Those weren't caused by debris," Rachel said flatly. "Something alive did that." A heavy silence settled over the group. None of them wanted to admit it. But the evidence was undeniable. Whatever lived on the planet below had found them, and it wasn't shy about making its presence known. "We should report this," Lisa suggested hesitantly. "Maybe request reinforcements, or at least permission." "To arm ourselves and say what?" Kevin asked bitterly. "That we got spooked by some claw marks? They'll laugh us off the comms channel." "He's right," John admitted reluctantly. "We're supposed to handle situations like this without escalating things. If we ask for help, it'll look bad. Not just for us, but for everyone. Back home, counting on us to prove humanity can play nice." Lisa frowned. "But what happens if whatever made those scratches decides to come back? What do we do then?" No one answered. The truth hung unspoken in the air. They were on their own. Later that evening, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She volunteered to check the external sensors, partly to distract herself, and partly because she hoped to find answers. As she stepped outside onto the narrow platform connecting the pods, the cold bite of the artificial atmosphere hit her skin. She pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders and glanced around nervously. The stars glittered above, indifferent to her fear. Below, the planet loomed large, its surface cloaked in shadows cast by the setting twin suns. For a moment, she wondered if the creatures Zor, whatever they were, could see her from down there. Did they know she was alone? Sudden noise snapped her attention back to the present. It sounded like scraping, faint but unmistakable, coming from the far side of the station, heart pounding. Lisa crept along the walkway, gripping the railing for support. When she rounded the corner, she froze. There, etched into the metal wall, were more scratches. Fresh ones. And beside them, pressed into the dust coating the surface, were paw prints. Large ones, her breath hitched. Slowly, she turned her head. To scan the darkness around her, nothing moved, yet the sensation of unseen eyes boring into her grew stronger with each passing second. Then she heard a low growl, barely audible over the hum of the station's systems. It came from somewhere close, too close. Instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs refused to obey. Instead, she stood rooted to the spot, every muscle tense, waiting for the inevitable. The growl grew louder, closer. Suddenly, a shape lunged out of the shadows, a sleek, wolf-like creature with glowing eyes and razor-sharp teeth bared in a snarl. Lisa screamed and stumbled backward, tripping over her own feet. The creature hesitated, tilting its head as if studying her. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, it turned and disappeared into the night, shaking uncontrollably. Lisa scrambled to her feet and bolted back inside. She slammed the door shut behind her and leaned against it, gasping for air. When the others rushed to her side, demanding to know what happened, all she could manage was a single sentence. "They're watching us." This concludes Part 1. Let me know if you'd like to proceed with the next sections. Part 2 the next morning brought no relief. The team gathered in the main observation pod, their faces pale and drawn from lack of sleep. Lisa recounted her encounter with the creature the night before, her voice trembling as she described its glowing eyes and predatory stance. Kevin paced back and forth, muttering under his breath about how reckless it had been for her to go outside alone. Rachel sat quietly, her gaze fixed on the floor, while John leaned against the wall, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "We need to figure out what we're dealing with," John said finally, breaking the tense silence. "If those things are smart enough to track us, they might be planning something bigger. Or maybe they're just animals," Kevin shot back. "Animals that happen to have glowing eyes and know how to sneak around in the dark." "Either way, we can't ignore it," Lisa interjected. "Whatever they are, they've already attacked the shuttle. What's stopping them from coming? After us next." Rachel raised her hand slightly, signaling she wanted to speak. When everyone turned to look at her, she hesitated before speaking. "There's something else we should consider. Those claw marks, they weren't random. They were deliberate. Okay, almost like a warning." "A warning," Kevin repeated incredulously. "What could a bunch of wild animals possibly want to warn us about?" "I don't think they're just animals," Rachel replied softly. "Not anymore." Words hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. No one argued with her. But deep down, they all felt it too, the sense that whatever lurked below wasn't ordinary. Something about this planet was different. And it wasn't just the creatures stalking them. Later that day, the team decided to investigate further. They suited up and boarded the rover, a small, rugged vehicle designed for exploring harsh terrain. John took the driver's seat, while Lisa manned the navigation console. Kevin and Rachel sat in the back, clutching their tools and scanning devices. None of them spoke much as they descended toward the planet's surface, the hum of the engines filling the silence. The atmosphere was thick and humid, pressing against the windows like a living thing. Towering trees stretched endlessly in every direction, their branches twisting together to form a dense canopy overhead. Shafts of light filtered through the leaves, casting eerie patterns on the forest floor. The air smelled earthy and damp, tinged with an unfamiliar metallic tang that made Lisa wrinkle her nose. "This place gives me the creeps," Kevin muttered, gripping the edge of his seat as the rover jolted over uneven ground. "Stay focused," John reminded him. "We're here to find answers, not scare ourselves." They drove for nearly an hour before spotting anything unusual, and suddenly, Lisa pointed ahead. "Over there. Stop the rover." John hit the brakes, and the vehicle skidded to a halt. Through the windshield, they could see the remnants of a structure, a crumbling stone wall, half buried in vines and moss. It didn't look natural. Someone or something had built it. The team climbed out cautiously, their boots crunching against the soft soil. Up close, the wall revealed intricate carvings etched into the stone. Faded but still visible, the images depicted humanoid figures standing alongside strange beast-like creatures. Some of the figures appeared to be hunting, wielding spears or bows. Others seemed engaged in battle, locked in violent struggles with the beasts. "What is this?" Lisa whispered, running her fingers lightly over the carvings. "It looks ancient." Rachel examined another section of the wall, her brow furrowed in concentration. "These symbols, they remind me of early human cave paintings. Look, they're showing people using tools, working together, strategizing." "But these aren't humans," Kevin said, pointing to one of the figures. "Look at the proportions. Their bodies are wrong. Too tall, too thin." "Maybe they're not human," Rachel agreed. "But whoever they are, they share some traits with us. See here?" She gestured to a carving of a figure crouching low, hands outstretched as if preparing to pounce. "That stance, it's instinctual, predatory. Humans do the same thing when we hunt or fight." John frowned. "You think these carvings are trying to tell us something? Like a message?" "Possibly," Rachel said slowly. "Or maybe it's a record. A history of survival." As they continued to study the ruins, Lisa noticed something odd. One particular carving stood out among the rest. It showed a group of figures surrounding a large, wolf-like creature. Unlike the other depictions, these figures carried no weapons. Instead, they relied solely on their movements circling the beast, feinting, dodging its attacks. The scene ended with the creature lying defeated, its body pinned beneath the weight of the figures. "They didn't need weapons," Lisa murmured, tracing the image with her finger. "They won because they worked together, because they adapted." Kevin snorted. "Yeah, well, we're not exactly cavemen. We've got technology on our side, do we?" John countered sharply. "Our shuttle's damaged, our supplies are limited, and we're completely cut off from Earth. If those things out there decide to attack again, we'll have to rely on more than just gadgets to survive." His words sobered the group. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Rachel straightened up, her expression thoughtful. "There's something else," she said. "These carvings, they're not just about survival, they're about evolution, about becoming stronger through struggle. Maybe that's what this planet is, a testing ground." "A testing ground for what?" Kevin asked skeptically. "For species," Rachel replied. "For life itself. Think about it. It's creatures we've seen, they're intelligent, adaptable, and now they've found us. What if this whole setup isn't accidental? What if we're being tested too?" The idea sent a chill through the group. None of them liked the implications, but they couldn't deny the logic behind Rachel's theory. Everything they'd encountered so far, the ruins, the carvings, the creatures seemed designed to push them to their limits. By late afternoon, the team had mapped out most of the site. As they prepared to leave, Lisa lingered near the wall, staring at the carvings one last time. Something about them felt hauntingly familiar, as though they held a truth she couldn't quite grasp. "Lisa, let's go," John called from the rover. "We need to get back before nightfall." Reluctantly, she tore herself away and joined the others. The ride back to the outpost was quieter than before, each member lost in their own thoughts. The ruins had raised more questions than answers, and the weight of those unanswered questions pressed heavily on them. As the suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest, the team reached the safety of the station. But even inside the reinforced walls of Horizon 7, none of them felt truly secure. The memory of the carvings and the creatures lurking in the darkness followed them like ghosts. That night, as Lisa lay awake in her bunk, she couldn't shake the feeling that the planet was alive, not in the literal sense, but in a way that defied explanation. It watched, it waited, and it judged. Somewhere deep within the forest, a low growl echoed through the trees. Part 3, the days that followed, were tense and restless. The team stuck close to the outpost, avoiding unnecessary excursions outside. Every sound, the creak of metal, the hum of machinery, even the distant howling carried on the wind set, their nerves on edge. They rotated shifts, taking turns monitoring the external cameras and keeping an eye on the shuttle's damaged hull. But no matter how vigilant they were, the sense of being watched never faded. Kevin was the first to crack. He paced the narrow corridors of the station like a caged animal, muttering under his breath about how useless it was to sit around waiting for something to happen. "We should be doing something," he snapped one evening during dinner. "Anything. Sitting here isn't going to protect us." "Like what?" Lisa asked, her voice calm but tinged with frustration. "Charge out there with sticks and stones? We're unarmed, Kevin. Remember?" "That's exactly my point." Kevin shot back, slamming his fist on the table. "Why are we even here if we can't defend ourselves? This whole mission is a joke. Peaceful coexistence? What happens when those things decide they don't want to coexist anymore?" John leaned forward, his expression firm. "We stick to the plan. That's what happens. We observe, we adapt, and we survive. Just like humans always have. And look where that's gotten us so far," Kevin muttered darkly. Rachel, who had been quiet throughout the argument, finally spoke up. "He's not wrong, John. We've seen what's out there. These creatures aren't just animals. They're smart, maybe smarter than we realize. If we don't start thinking ahead, we're going to end up as prey." Her words silenced the room. No one wanted to admit it, but she was right. Whatever lived in the forest wasn't acting randomly. It was testing them, probing their weaknesses. Sooner or later, it would strike again. The next morning, Rachel proposed a plan. She suggested setting up makeshift traps around the perimeter of the station using materials they already had: rope, metal scraps, and anything else they could repurpose. "It's not much," she admitted, "but it might buy us some time. If they attack, or at least give us a warning." John hesitated. "We're supposed to avoid escalating things. Traps could make them more aggressive." "We're past that," Lisa said firmly. "They've already attacked the shuttle. Setting up defenses doesn't mean we're looking for a fight. It means we're trying to stay alive." After a long pause, John nodded reluctantly. "Fine, let's do it. But we keep it simple." To elaborate. For the rest of the day, the team worked together to construct the traps. Kevin took charge of rigging the mechanisms, his hands moving quickly despite his earlier frustration. Lisa helped gather materials, while Rachel mapped out strategic locations based on their observations of the creature's movements. Even John pitched in, though he remained visibly uneasy about the whole idea. As night fell, they finished their work and retreated inside. The station felt smaller than usual, its walls closing in as the darkness thickened outside. None of them slept well. The faint rustle of leaves and distant growls kept them awake, each sound amplified by their fear. Around midnight, first trap triggered. A loud clang echoed through the station, followed by a sharp yelp. Everyone bolted upright, their hearts racing. John grabbed a flashlight and headed for the door, motioning for the others to follow. They moved cautiously onto the platform, their eyes scanning the shadows below. One of the traps, a simple snare made of rope and scrap metal, had caught something. A creature thrashed wildly in the netting, its glowing eyes reflecting the beam of John's flashlight. It was smaller than the ones they'd seen before, almost puppy-like in size, but its teeth gleamed razor-sharp in the dim light. "What do we do now?" Lisa whispered, gripping the railing tightly. "Nothing," John said quietly. "We leave it. If we interfere, we risk angering the others." "But it's hurt," Lisa protested. "We can't just—" "It's not our problem," Kevin interrupted harshly. "This thing would tear us apart if it got the chance. Saw what happened last time?" Lisa opened her mouth to argue, but Rachel placed a hand on her shoulder. "He's right. As much as it hurts, we can't afford to show weakness. Not now." Reluctantly, Lisa stepped back. The group watched in silence as the creature struggled for several minutes before finally breaking free. With a final snarl, it limped off into the darkness. Leaving behind shredded pieces of rope and a trail of blood, the incident left them shaken. None of them spoke much after returning inside, each lost in their own thoughts. Lisa couldn't stop thinking about the trapped creature, its frightened whimpers echoing in her mind. Was it truly dangerous, or had it simply been curious? She wanted to believe there was more to it, that maybe not all of the creatures were hostile, but the evidence pointed otherwise. Rachel, meanwhile, spent hours poring over data from their previous scans. She noticed patterns in the creatures' behavior, subtle signs that suggested coordination. They weren't attacking randomly. They were learning, adapting. Each encounter brought them closer to understanding their enemy, finding new ways to exploit their vulnerabilities. Kevin grew increasingly paranoid, convinced that someone among them was sabotaging their efforts. "Think about it," he said during breakfast the next morning. "Every time we try to set up defenses, something goes wrong. The traps fail, supplies go missing. Someone's messing with us." "That's ridiculous," Lisa retorted. "Would do that? There's only 4 of us." "Exactly," Kevin said, narrowing his eyes, "which makes it pretty easy to figure out." "You're grasping at straws," John said sharply. "We're all scared, Kevin. Pointing fingers isn't going to help." "It's not pointing fingers if I'm right." Kevin shot back. The argument escalated until Rachel intervened, her voice cutting through the tension. "Enough. Both of you. We don't have time for this. If we're going to survive, we need to focus on what matters. Accusing each other won't get us anywhere." Her words brought a reluctant truce, but the damage was done. Trust began to erode, a crack forming in the foundation of their fragile alliance. By the 3rd night, the attacks resumed. The creatures came in pairs this time, circling the station. Like shadows given form, her glowing eyes pierced the darkness, watching every movement. The traps slowed them down, but not enough. One by one, the mechanisms failed, torn apart by claws or sheer force. Inside, the team huddled together, listening. To the chaos outside, Lisa clutched a wrench tightly, her knuckles white. Kevin held a piece of rebar like a club, his jaw clenched. Rachel monitored the security feeds, calling out updates whenever she spotted movement. John stood near the door, ready to act if the creatures broke through. "They're smarter than before," Rachel said grimly. "They're targeting the weak points. Testing us. They're hunting us," Lisa corrected softly. "Just like the carving showed." Yeah, the realization hit them all at once. This wasn't random aggression. It was deliberate, methodical. The creatures were learning from every encounter, adapting their tactics to overcome the humans' defenses. And the humans, for all their ingenuity, were running out of options. As dawn approached, the attacks ceased abruptly, leaving behind a trail of destruction. The traps were gone, the shuttle's hull bore fresh scratches, and the airlock door dented inward, as though something massive had tried to break through. Exhausted and battered, the team gathered in the main pod to assess the damage. No one spoke for a long time. Then Rachel broke the silence. "They're not just predators," she said quietly. "They're mirrors, showing us what we are. Fragile, resilient, dangerous. Everything humanity has ever been and everything we could become." Her words lingered, in the air, heavy and unspoken. For the first time, they understood the true nature of their ordeal. This wasn't just about survival. It was about identity. About proving to themselves and to whatever watched from the shadows that being human meant more than vulnerability. It meant strength, adaptability, instinct. And somewhere beyond the horizon, hidden in the depths of the forest, the creatures waited, watching, judging. Part for the days that followed were a blur of exhaustion and tension. The team worked tirelessly to repair the damage caused by the creatures' attacks, but it felt like an endless cycle. Every time they fixed something, the creatures returned. To destroy it again, supplies dwindled, tempers flared, and the cracks in their unity grew wider with each passing hour. Lisa spent most of her time studying the footage from the security cameras, searching for patterns or weaknesses in the creatures' behavior. She noticed subtle changes in their movements, how they coordinated their attacks, how one would distract while another struck from behind. It reminded her of pack hunters on Earth, yet there was something distinctly alien about them.
Hey there.
Intelligence seemed almost human, as if they were learning not just from instinct but from observation. "They're studying us," Lisa said one evening, her voice low but urgent. "Every move we make, every trap we set, they're watching and adapting." John frowned, rubbing his temples. "So what you're saying is, we're running out of tricks?" "Not necessarily," Rachel chimed in. She had been analyzing the data from their earlier scans of the planet and piecing together fragments of information about its ecosystem. "These creatures aren't just predators. They're part of something bigger, something older," Kevin scoffed. "Great, so now we're dealing with ancient space monsters. What's next? Flying saucers?" Rachel ignored him, unfazed by his sarcasm. "Think about it. The ruins we found, they weren't abandoned. Someone built them. Maybe whoever did is still here, pulling the strings. You mean like puppet masters? Lisa asked, her brow furrowing. Exactly, Rachel replied. What if these creatures are tools, weapons even, designed to test us or eliminate us? If we fail, the idea sent a chill through the group. None of them wanted to believe it, but the evidence was hard to ignore. The precision of the attacks, the way the creatures seemed to anticipate their defenses at all, pointed to some higher intelligence orchestrating events from the shadows. The next morning, John called a meeting. He stood at the center of the main pod, his expression grim but determined. We can't keep reacting to these things. We need to take control. If Rachel's right, and I think she might be, then we're not just fighting animals. We're being tested. And if we want to survive, we have to pass. What does that even mean? Kevin demanded. How do we pass against something we don't understand? We adapt, John said simply. That's what humans do best. We figure out the rules of the game and turn them to our advantage. Rachel nodded, and we use what we know. These creatures are fast, strong, and smart, but they're also predictable. They rely on teamwork, just like we do. If we can disrupt that, we might stand a chance. Lisa hesitated before speaking. How? We're outnumbered and outmatched. Even if we come up with a plan, there's no guarantee it'll work. Doesn't have to guarantee anything, John said firmly. It just has to give us enough time to figure out who or what is behind this. With that, the team got to work. They divided tasks based on their strengths. Kevin focused on reinforcing the station's defenses, welding metal plates over weak points and rigging makeshift alarms to alert them of intrusions. Lisa scoured the remaining supplies for anything useful, repurposing tools and equipment into potential weapons. Rachel continued her analysis, mapping out possible locations where the creatures might originate from or retreat to after their attacks. And John took charge of strategy, devising a plan to draw the creatures into a controlled confrontation. By nightfall, they were ready. The station was fortified, though barely, and their traps were more sophisticated than before, instead of relying solely on physical barriers. They incorporated elements of misdirection, false trails, decoys, and noisemakers designed to confuse and scatter the pack. It wasn't much, but it was the best they could do under the circumstances. As darkness fell, the team gathered in the main pod, listening intently to the sounds outside. The forest was eerily quiet, the usual rustling of leaves replaced by an oppressive stillness. It was as if the entire planet was holding its breath. Then came the first growl. It started faintly, distant, but quickly grew louder as the creatures closed in. One by one, their glowing eyes appeared in the shadows surrounding the station like wolves circling prey. The traps triggered almost immediately, sending bursts of noise and motion rippling through the perimeter. For a moment, chaos erupted as the creatures scattered, confused by the sudden disruption. Now, John shouted. The team sprang into action. Kevin activated the alarms, flooding the area with blinding light and deafening sound. Lisa hurled makeshift projectiles, a mix of sharp metal shards and weighted containers at any creature that ventured to close. Rachel monitored the security feeds, guiding the others to vulnerable spots and warning them of incoming threats. And John led the charge, using his size and strength to fend off attackers that managed to breach their defenses. For a brief moment, it seemed like their plan was working. The creatures faltered, their coordination disrupted by the chaos. Then something changed. From the edge of the forest emerged a new figure, one larger and more imposing than the rest. Its eyes burned brighter, its movements deliberate and calculated. It didn't attack immediately. Instead, it stood back, observing the scene with an almost human-like curiosity. When it finally moved, it did so with purpose, directing the smaller creatures with sharp barks and gestures. They've got a leader, Lisa gasped, her voice trembling. This isn't random anymore. Focus, John barked. Stick to the plan. But the plan was unraveling. The leader's presence galvanized the pack, turning their disarray into renewed aggression. Traps failed, barriers crumbled, and the team found themselves retreating further into the station. The airlock door groaned under the weight of repeated impacts, bending inward with each strike. We can't hold them off forever, Kevin yelled, panic rising in his voice. We don't have to, Rachel said suddenly. I had been staring at the security monitor, her expression intense. Look. At this, on the screen, one section of the forest showed movement not from the creatures, but from something else. A faint glow pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Whatever it was, it seemed to emanate from deep within the ruins they'd discovered. Earlier? That's it, Rachel said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. That's where the answers are. That's where the real threat is coming from. John hesitated, torn between staying to defend the station and pursuing the source of the signal. Finally, he made his decision. We split up. Kevin and Lisa. Stay here and hold the line. Rachel and I will head to the ruins. If we can find out who or what is controlling these things, maybe we can end this once and for all. No way, Kevin protested. You're crazy if you think we can handle this alone. You don't have a choice, John snapped. If we don't stop this now, none of us are getting out of here alive. There was no time for further argument. Grabbing what little gear they could carry, John and Rachel slipped out of the station through a secondary hatch, leaving Kevin and Lisa to face the onslaught. The forest was darker than ever, the twin moons obscured by thick clouds. Every step felt heavier, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them. As they approached the ruins, the glow grew brighter, pulsing in sync with the eerie hum that filled the air. This is it, Rachel whispered. Whatever's been testing us sits here. John tightened his grip on a length of pipe he'd brought along as a makeshift weapon. Let's hope we're ready. They stepped into the clearing where the ruins lay, their breaths visible in the cold night air. The carvings on the walls glowed faintly, responding to the pulse of light emanating from the ground. At the center of the site stood a massive stone pedestal, atop which rested a crystalline object shaped like a jagged star. It radiated energy, casting strange shadows across the clearing, before they could examine it further. A low growl echoed behind them. Turning slowly, they saw the leader of the pack emerge from the trees. Its glowing eyes fixed on the crystal. It knows, Rachel murmured. It's protecting this thing. John glanced at her, his expression grim. Then let's see what happens when we take it away. He lunged toward the pedestal, snatching the crystal just as the creature charged. The world seemed to shudder, the ground vibrating beneath their feet as the light intensified. For a moment, everything went white. When the light faded, the creature was gone. So was the crystal. And in its place stood a figure unlike anything they'd ever seen, tall, translucent, and shimmering with an otherworldly aura. You have passed, it said, its voice resonating like a chorus of whispers. But your trial is far from over. Somewhere in the distance, the sounds of battle faded. The creatures retreated into the forest, leaving the outpost eerily silent. Whatever had been testing them was done for now. But the true challenge, they realized, had only just begun. Part 5. The figure stood motionless, its form shimmering like liquid glass under the dim light of the twin moons. Its presence was both mesmerizing and unsettling, radiating an aura that made John and Rachel feel small and exposed. They exchanged a glance, their earlier confidence wavering in the face of this new, incomprehensible entity. You have passed, the figure repeated, its voice layered with tones that seemed to echo inside their minds rather than their ears. But your trial is far from over. What do you mean? John asked, his voice steady, despite the unease prickling at the edges of his thoughts. Who are you? What do you want from us? Yeah. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if considering the question. We are observers, guardians of balance. Your kind has ventured into realms not yet meant for you. So coexist, you must prove yourselves worthy. Worthy of what? Rachel interjected, her tone sharp but controlled. Survival? Respect? Or just another test we'll barely scrape through? The figure's translucent face shifted subtly, almost resembling a smile, or perhaps a smirk. All of those things, and more. John stepped forward cautiously, clutching the crystalline object tighter in his hand. If you're testing us, why not be upfront about it? Why send those creatures after us? Why make us fight blindly? Understanding comes through struggle, the figure replied. Cannot appreciate strength without weakness, nor resilience without fear. Your species thrives on adaptation and rising to challenges others would flee. This is who you are. This is what we seek to understand. Rachel frowned, her mind racing. So you're saying humanity's value lies in our ability to survive? That's all this is about? Seeing if we can outlast whatever you throw at us? In part, the figure said cryptically, but survival alone does not define worthiness. Cooperation, ingenuity, morality, all these factors play a role. You are being judged not only as individuals, but as representatives of your kind. John felt a surge of frustration bubbling beneath his calm exterior. And who decides what's worthy? You? Some higher power pulling strings from the shadows? What gives you the right to judge us? The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, it raised one elongated arm, pointing toward the ruins behind them. The carvings on the walls began to glow faintly, illuminating scenes that hadn't been visible before. Images of different species, some humanoid, others utterly alien, engaged in battles, hunts, and acts of creation. Each carving told a story of survival, triumph, or failure. These are the trials of others, the figure explained. Some succeeded, others did not. Your fate will join theirs in time. Rachel took a step closer, her curiosity outweighing her fear. What happens if we fail? If we don't meet your standards? The figure's expression, if it could even be called that, shifted again, becoming colder, more distant. Failure results in eradication. Balance requires sacrifice. Those deemed unfit are removed. John clenched his fists, the implications sinking in. So it's life or death. No middle ground. No second chances. Life is defined by choices, the figure said simply. Yours determine your path. Back at the outpost, Kevin and Lisa were holding their own against the remaining creatures, though barely. The traps had held up longer than expected, giving them precious moments to regroup and reinforce weak points. But the leader's absence had left the pack disorganized, and they attacked in smaller groups. Probing for openings, Kevin swung a metal rod with surprising precision, driving away a snarling creature that had leaped onto the platform. How much longer can we keep this up? He shouted over the chaos. Lisa ducked behind a stack of crates, panting heavily. Not long. We need John and Rachel back here. Now they're probably dead, Kevin muttered darkly, though his tone betrayed more worry than conviction. Or worse. They're not dead, Lisa snapped, her voice firm despite the exhaustion evident in her posture. They wouldn't leave us unless they thought they could fix this. As if on cue, the attacks suddenly ceased. The creatures retreated into the forest, vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. For a moment, the silence was deafening. What just happened? Kevin asked, lowering his weapon cautiously. I don't know, Lisa admitted, stepping out from her hiding spot. She scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of movement. But I think it has something to do with John and Rachel. Meanwhile, John and Rachel faced a decision. The figure hadn't moved, its gaze fixed on them with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. The crystal in John's hand pulsed faintly, responding to his grip. What do you want from us now? John demanded, his patience wearing thin. Another test? Another battle? No, the figure said, its voice softer this time. The next phase begins when you return to your companions. The true measure of your species lies not in individual strength but in unity. Rachel crossed her arms, suspicion etched across her face. Unity? After everything we've been through, you expect us to trust each other completely. How do we even know you're telling the truth? The figure extended its hand, palm upward. Trust is earned, not given, as is survival. Take this opportunity to reflect. Learn from your struggles. Decide how you wish to proceed. Before they could respond, the figure vanished, dissolving into the air like mist carried by the wind. The ruins fell silent once more, leaving John and Rachel alone with their thoughts and the glowing crystal. when they returned to the outpost. Kevin and Lisa greeted them with a mix of relief and anger. "Where the hell were you?" Kevin barked, throwing down the piece of rebar he'd been using as a weapon. "We were getting torn apart out here." "Found answers," John said simply, holding up the crystal. Its light cast eerie shadows. Across the room, drawing everyone's attention, Lisa approached cautiously, her eyes wide with curiosity. "What is that?" "It's complicated," Rachel admitted. "But it seems to be connected to whatever's controlling the creatures and maybe the planet itself." Kevin rolled his eyes. Great. So instead of solving our problems, you brought back another mystery." "Fantastic." "It's more than that," John countered sharply. "This thing, it's proof that we're not dealing with random animals. There's intelligence behind this. Someone or something is testing us. And it's not done yet." Lisa frowned, glancing at the crystal warily. "Then what happens next?" "Are they coming back?" Rachel hesitated before answering. "I think the next challenge is closer than we realize. The figure we met it said the real test isn't about fighting. It's about working together. About proving we're capable of unity?" Kevin scoffed. "Unity? With all due respect, we're falling apart faster than this station. How are we supposed to pull that off?" "That's the point," John said firmly. "If we can't trust each other, we're already lost. Whatever's coming next, it's going to push us harder than anything we've faced so far. And if we don't stand together, we won't stand at all." The weight of his words settled over the group, heavy and undeniable. None of them trusted the situation or the mysterious forces manipulating it. But they couldn't deny the truth in John's statement. Their survival depended not just on their individual strengths, but on their ability to function as a team. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Lisa broke the silence, her voice quiet but resolute. "So what do we do now?" John looked at each of them in turn, his expression grim but determined. "We prepare, not just for another attack, but for whatever comes after. Because one thing's clear, this isn't just about staying alive. It's about proving we deserve to live." As dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the forest, the team set to work. Repairs resumed, defenses strengthened, and plans formulated. The crystal sat in the center of the main pod, its glow steady and unwavering, a reminder of the stakes they faced. Somewhere beyond the trees, hidden in the depths of the planet, the creatures stirred. Their leader emerged from the shadows, its glowing eyes fixed on the outpost. A low growl rumbled in its throat, echoing through the stillness. The game wasn't over. It was only beginning.